Welcome back. This is Luis Mendez, and I am your local realtor here in Polk County, but really in all of Central Florida. I work, I would say, from Okeechobee all the way up to Ocala. So if you're looking for a home, I got that covered. But here I want to talk to homeowners, those who own a home. I want to help you boost your curb appeal for this fall, winter for under $100. And it's very possible, very easy if you set aside some things. It's like, under $50, you could do things. So to dive into the video, first thing I would say is now that we're entering to cooler months where grass isn't growing too much, of course it's easy to cut the grass, but it's a great time to add fresh mulch and mulch or pine bark to your plants and surrounding. Focus on darker colors, dark browns or the rich mulch. I wouldn't use rubber. I've seen other places that sells rubber, which that doesn't work too well. But if you use a nice mulch where it's going to be cooler, we're not going to have rain that's going to come so much and kind of take the color off for that, make it fade. So it's going to be on your property for a lot longer time. So having that extra mulch, which is going to cost you about $40 to $80 to go to Lowe's and see if they have different, deals. I know Lowe's and Home Depot, they kind of go back and forth. Or if you know of a local place that sells mulch and bulk, definitely go for them as well. And then you could, kind of spread it around your yard. It does give it such a great pop when you're driving around. You see new mulch, like, ooh, this is a nice house. Next, for this is going to cost you about $30 to $60, depending. It could go up to $100. But plant seasonal flowers. If there's some seasonal plants that will only last or that's do great during the cooler months, because if you plant them during the summer months, by 1 or 2 o'clock they're dead because it's so hot, how hot it is. But right now, you could plant petunias, pansies, marigolds, and it has that fall look. And you could kind of plant some other things that kind of carries on to Christmas. So that way you could have a really nice garden in your front yard that, of course, during springtime, you could, they're probably going to die back and you could plant some, spring flowers. But at least for the next 4 months, you could have some really nice fall, short period of fall, and winter, which is more like fall weather. So, number three, paint and refinish the front door. A lot of people probably don't notice this, but you use the front door a lot, and the oils on your hands kind of, will kind of like stain the door, when you're keying, or if your keys, you have scratches, or when you're walking in or you're carrying things to the door, there's some scratches and paint chips and scuff marks. You have that a lot in your front door, and that could be, if you do it yourself, it could be really cheap, probably say in the low 30, low 30s, what you spend to fix all those by buying material, 25-30 bucks. If you hire someone to do it, you're looking at higher, but I'm sure you could get that up, for 50 bucks. Or even if you put a new handle, you could get a new handle for about 30 to 50 bucks, a new lock and everything. Make sure it's working nice. And here's a trick. If you don't want to change your lock, but you're having issues with the key because it's rain and it's rust, spray some WD-40 into the keyhole and it works like brand new. That's a great tip. But and also in your front door, you could put a Ring camera. If you don't have a camera in your front door, you're like living in the Stone Ages. I mean, protect your property. This is, if people are going to come in, they walk through the front door, put a Ring camera, put one of those Google cameras, a Blink camera, whatever it is, put something in your front door, whether you live in a safe neighborhood or not. You know, you could always keep an eye out who's in your property. If you see someone fall, if there's an accident, you could use that, to help you out. There's many pros with that. Number four, solar path lights. We live in an area. We live out in we live country city area, and it's in the city limits, but where we live, there's not so much street lights. Where we lived in Orlando, there was tons of, street lights. I mean, you had to put in black curtain windows to sleep good because there was so much lights outside. Where I live, there's not so many lights. So we put a bunch of these solar path lights, and it makes such a great, huge blessing, because you come home at night sometimes and it's so dark, you got to use your cell phone flashlight and it just doesn't work so well. But if you have these solar panel lights, and they last for a long time, we've had them for 6 years and they're still LED bright. They work tremendous. And I just saw a video on how to pop them up and put them down easily. You get a PVC pipe, chop it where it's the size, make sure it fits, and get one of those soft hammers and put those in the ground. So that way, instead of like trying to force it down there and breaking them, you just put it inside that little PVC pipe and it works out great, which I wish I would have known that 6 years ago. But now I'm telling you, so you could give it a try. Number 5, use decorative pots and planters. Or I would say, you could easily decorate your pots and planters as well. We did this during Christmas last year. We bought some nice glittery red ribbons, and we put those around our pots, and we had some pillars, and our trees. We had these nice white things, so we kind of, it looked like a candy cane land in our front yards, which looked pretty nice. And you could do this from 20 to 80 bucks. You don't have to go get the latest, brand name. You go to a dollar store or from Walmart, they have them pretty cheap, or even a thrift store. They sell a lot of these things that are very cheap. Number 6, I would say pressure wash and soft wash. So pressure wash is a heavy jet stream, your sidewalk and your driveway. I don't know what it is in other places, but in Florida, if you have oak trees, just, debris, mud, oils, and all this stuff could stain your driveway, stains your sidewalk. And because you see it every day, you don't really notice a difference. And when you get it clean, it really pops. I mean, your house literally looks brighter when you clean your driveway and the sidewalk. And sometimes if you have an oak tree and you've never done the sidewalk, those sidewalks could look like dark brown, black. And when you have that clean, it's like a highlighter. It's so bright and it pops. It makes your house pop compared to the whole neighborhood. And it makes it look nice, And that's also a good time to maybe cut back on your tree, because you don't want a funky looking tree in the front yard, because that's going to be also bad for the hurricanes. But having that prepped is going to make it look very, very nice. Number 7, clean windows and frames. And this is going to be kind of with the soft wash part. The pressure wash is going to be heavy duty. The soft wash is where you could pretty much get a chemical, like, pool bleach is like the best for for cleaning. Make sure if you have paint, if it's not like a vinyl thing, test it first on a little piece, because you don't want the pool bleach to take off the stain or the paint color from your house. Test in a little spot first before you test it throughout your whole house. But most houses, it works pretty fine. And you don't want to use a pressure washing on a vinyl, because then you could see the streaks and it looks terrible. So you do a soft wash, which is, it's you put like a bubbly soap, with bleach on there, and it just covers everything, and within seconds it comes off. And it does great also for the fence. But for the window, it's very common to get, if you live in Florida, if you have an older window, you see it, where the screen is at, it gets dark, it collects dust, may have bee wasps connected to it. For like 10 to 20 bucks, you could really clean the outside of your house doing that. Where with the pressure washer, you're paying about $50 to $100 to rent, unless you already have a machine, which the machines, they cost, about up to 500 bucks. And it'll cost about that much to pay someone to do it. But you could rent a machine for about $50 to $80. So number 8 will be replacing the mailbox numbers, or the mailbox. You buy a house, sometimes if you buy a new house, you may not have a mailbox. If you're buying a new house in a non-HOA, if you're buying a new house in an HOA, you probably don't have a mailbox. They have everything in a mailbox location where you have to walk there, and and you have a whole box for the whole neighborhood. But if you have a mailbox and it's old, it's a great time to maybe upgrade it. That'll cost you about $100. A whole mailbox could be a little pricey, or you could do a DIY thing and kind of build out the frame, or or you could go on Etsy and you could buy these numbers, 1977, or whatever number you have. You could put that in your house. It looks different from everything. It looks modern, it looks nicer. You could have it rustic. You could put your number and the name, so it makes it easier for the mailman to come and deliver stuff, and they don't get mixed up with other places. So you could always do that. um, and kind of decorate that, and they have it as low as $25 I've seen, and see that they could do stuff. But you could play around with that. You could do it yourself, or you could have someone else do that for you. Number 9, of course, cutting the grass, but edging and trimming the bushes. you know if Even if you don't cut the grass, if you just edged, where the grass kind of spills over um to the sidewalk or to the curb, if you were to cut it, it looks so nice when it's like this. It looks very crisp. Where if your grass is pretty tall, but you have the edge, it stands out compared to so much. And there's some neighborhoods where you need to do it. Like if not, you get a violation with HOA. But in areas that are non HOA, stand out, make sure your property looks nice. Be your own HOA president and Karen, and complain to yourself that it's not looking nice. But the trim bushes, during summer, the heat, the rain, the sunshine, it causes these bushes to go wild. Right now, it's a great time to trim the bushes, you know, so that way it'll build, you cut it from the top and it could fill itself up, create a nice bush around where it's at. And you could easily do that for under $40. It's not going to cost too much to get scissors. To get a trimmer, yeah, that may cost you about $100 for that. But at least if you're just doing a little edging, you could rent or maybe pay someone up to $40 to do that. And number 10, add decoration. Now we're getting into Christmas season. I like to celebrate Christmas a year round. Or like some people say, from Christmas in July, right after 4th of July, Christmas until the end of January. But no, all kidding aside, you know, you could get decorations pretty cheap. You could do DIY decorations. You could even go to the thrift store and see if they have any outside decorations, which you'd be surprised how in January people will pay so much money for these decorations and hand it over to the thrift store. Um, so that way, just to get rid of it. I don't know how people could do that, but they toss it out. That could be your thing. And you could get it pretty cheap. And, don't go all out. You can go all out if you want, but you could just do a little bit here this year. Next year, you could add on to it. And soon enough, like when you're in your 80s, you could be like the house where everyone in the whole world wants to drive by and see your house because you have 1,000 lights and you have all these things and you have to turn the radio to match you could be one of those people maybe in the future. But here is my 10 ways on how you can boost your Florida curb appeal for this fall and winter season for under $100. You don't have to do it all together. You could do each section just under $100. So I guess you could say you could do everything for under 1,000, really. But thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, and if you have any questions, put in a comment below, and I'd love to help you out.